Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, June 20th, 2024. My name is John Pieranunzi, and this is the opening swing. Let's begin today, as we always do, with our news. Out of Europe, we got the German PPI, we got several auctions, and we also got the Bank of England interest rate decision, which came out unchanged. None of this really significantly moved the US markets, which have just been kind of like grinding higher, the equities at least. Coming into our US hours, our 8:30 news drivers are housing starts and permits, as well as jobless claims. We also get Philly Fed at 8:30 and current account. 15 minutes later, we have Kashkari speaking at 8:45 Eastern. And then we also have at 11 a.m. the petroleum status report. Into the afternoon, there are a few announcements out of the Treasury land, and we have a few auctions. 4 o'clock, we also have Barkin speaking, and at 10:15, Daily speaks during the Asia Pac session, which is when I sleep. Not everybody, though. Let's go on to some charts. Find our daily chart here. Or actually, we'll begin with our weekly. So the weekly chart, I just want to very quickly just reiterate that we remain in price discovery higher on the weekly as well as the monthly. I'm not even going to show those charts, but just the key to recognize on these higher time frame charts is they remain very bullish. This weekly chart here, we're well above the prior week's range and we're sticking to the highs. So just that's something to just keep in mind, is that we're just very bullish on the higher time frame charts. We'll take a moment to look at our TPO chart here. This is one we haven't looked at in a while, but it's worthwhile today. Basically what I'm really looking at here is, and this is just a chart of the June, so we don't have the continuous contract prior to this, but that's all right for our purposes here. What we can just see is this area of support, which to me, I look at this as a buyer, a bid, a quorum of people that were willing to buy at this area, and they weren't filled because obviously we weren't able to trade through and completely fill them. If everybody here was filled, we had to trade through and test beyond and go higher. And that would say, oh, okay, everybody that wanted to buy here is filled. We didn't get that. Instead, we just got a hold and then an eruption higher, breakout higher, and we left a lot of singles here. So that's why I'm kind of showing this chart. When we repriced higher to the next offer, the next area that people were willing to sell, which is up here, and we left this very unauctioned area below. And then from here, we kind of took out this offer, leaving this area in the middle, this TPO, right around the 55.50 area, and we have continued higher. So it's just just kind of reiterating, we're seeing really clear price discovery higher in the S&P 500, and for me at least, I'm not aggressively fading this with any structured positions, because the higher time frame is telling me that the path of least resistance is higher. Doesn't mean it's an easy trading environment, obviously, though. Let's move on to our trigger chart and discuss some price action that we could see today that may be tradable. Okay, here let's tie in what we just talked about, where we have this area, this balanced area, the upper balanced area that I just referred to, that we had broken out, broken out higher from. The low of our balance here, we have our daily one time framing. And then as I mentioned, we have our singles, prior week's highs right here, and more single prints down below. Should we break and hold below the one time framing, these areas are our targets. Within this area, the important region that I mentioned is the 50s, which is kind of the center of mass for this whole this thing that's going on here, this area from 43 up to 62, this tight area of balance, I would expect support around the 50s on any test. Then we have our former, what was the all-time high the last time we had an RTH session, which is the 62. So we have this area here from 43 to 62 with the 50 handle as the price that I'm paying attention to in here. And then we've pushed above the 75s. Here's our developing overnight high. And the next kind of psychological landmark is the century figure, 5,600 up here. And we also have a measured move calculated by FT71 right there. Above, I would be aware of if we get through this, just kind of planning ahead, which would be 2 vol up very far, would be the 25s would be my next area. So this is the map that I'm looking at today. What might we expect? Well, I'll tell you, surprise, surprise, I'm expecting continued price discovery higher. What shape might that take? The most likely thing that I'm seeing right now is we've broken out higher. Right kind of here, we hit a bit of an offer and then we pushed through, and this offer is holding, or that resistance turn to support is holding so far. So the most bullish scenario would be if that continues to hold, which is, I am as of right now kind of expecting it to do, and we see just a grind higher that takes the high, pulls back, holds this area on any pullbacks, and probably holds the VPOC, kind of just begins this sort of like grinding move higher. I'll look for this a lot, this kind of price action where we have an impulse and then a small pullback that seems to hit something, hit some type of an offer, and then a grind higher from here. It's like we have a ceiling of an offer in this area, we bust through it, and then this becomes the new sort of floor, and then we sort of see a grind up higher, revolving around like usually a trend line. So get rid of some of these to clean it up a little bit. But this is essentially kind of my most expected scenario today. I think that we sort of push through here and just kind of grind up. What will be the area, the key psychological area that I would look to be tested? Century. So this is kind of my most expected, very boring, but it's just kind of what's going on here. I would expect this to kind of grind higher. How would I trade this? I would look to trade pullbacks into potentially DGPs if they show support on tests. If they don't, but we could also get much deeper pullbacks and push through DGPs. But really, this whole situation of the expectation of a grind higher would be on my most expected scenario, as long as we're holding this sort of 75 to 80s area. We hold above here, I'm expecting a grind higher into century. And I'll mention, just because I always do, that this action is vulnerable to an impulse lower that then cannot get the prior high, and then takes out that low, and we see reversion lower. So essentially my primary idea today is that we see this and we may see this, although I'm not really expecting an aggressive sellers to show up aggressively today. I'm not expecting that. It could easily happen, but I'm not expecting that. I'm expecting mostly a grind that likely holds above the 74s. Let's talk about how that could be wrong and what other things might be on deck. Okay, again, I'll talk about what would be like a really nice trade that we could potentially get today. A really nice trade, in my opinion, I think that would be a pullback somewhere to this support. So we could get a pullback that pushes down, that falls below these 70s, tries to come back, tries to recover, cannot, and then pushes into somewhere between these 62s and 50s, this region. If we get a pullback into the support that is in this area, because I'm expecting support in this area, if we get a pullback into this area that then can impulse, pull back, hold the low, that would be something I would look at as a potential long. Where would I target? Right back to the 74s, or 70s to 74s, really this whole area from about 72, 73 up to 80s, this distribution. That would be my target. If we get a pullback into this area and that shows support here, I would look to trade it back to this area. And then it's possible for us to get the continuation, although if I would get this trade, that would be good enough for me. I wouldn't, maybe we get a runner, maybe we wouldn't. How could this flip completely bearish? Well, for me, what I would have to see to go completely bearish and expect us to take out the low, we would have to get through the 70s, fall through the 70s. And this could happen also as well without taking out this high. If we don't take out this high, we've seen action like this before that just kind of looks like it wants to and then just falls over lower and starts doing this without taking out this high. And we'll mention, just like I said, this area, no matter how it gets here, is an area where I would be open to a long. But if that's not what we get and we instead get just kind of a drip into this area, what would that look like? Whoops, wrong color. A drip into this area that potentially may give a look like it wants to go long again, but fails around the 70 area, fails to recover this distribution, and then starts reverting lower. We would target the 50s. And then if we continue through there, which I really wouldn't necessarily expect, we target the one time framing 43s. I'll mention that again, like I always do, should we get down here today, my initial expectation would be sort of a test right here, takes out this low. And then my primary expectation on a test below would be support. Where would that support, if we get that push higher, that test below and the push higher, where would be the area that we'd expect to be retested? 50s, the center of this area. Center of this area once again. So let's tie a bow on all that and just discuss again. So my most expected scenario is that we just continue to grind higher. That's my most expected idea. It's not really a great trade, but that would be my most expected idea. That would be vulnerable, as always, to an impulse lower that doesn't get the prior high. Another way that this could happen is we could just not get this high. And we could just kind of, as I said, zipper and then fall over lower. We may find support around the 75s. We may push lower to this area. If we get to this area, which is basically 50 to 62, that's the area where I think a structured long would be possible. And that, if that happens, that would probably be the best trade if it plays out like that. That idea could also set up but fail, in which case I would look for tests of the 50s. Again, as I've said, this whole area, I would look for support, so I'd still be open to support happening right there. And if it doesn't, then the next area to be tested would be the one time framing right here, where I would again expect support. The environment would change and I'd have to reconsider if we fall below the 43s and we cannot recover. That would change my perspective on this environment, which would be more interesting. It would probably be a better trade. But that's essentially what I'm seeing today. I hope this is reasonably complete. It's, we're pretty much just in price discovery higher in the indices, which actually makes things more difficult. Why does it make things more difficult when we know the direction? Because the areas to trade can get more difficult. That's why. When there's disagreement in the market, sometimes it's easier for a short-term trader to really handicap specific areas for a turn. But whenever the direction is fairly obvious, it gets harder to have those tight risk-reward trades. At least that's my experience of it. If we continue to push the all-time highs, I'll probably be looking more at crude. It's kind of a better trade right now, but we'll see how that goes. The good thing about this trip to the all-time highs is there still is some range in volatility, so that's positive for us. But I'm going to wrap it up here before the software freezes and I have to start again. So I hope that was complete. I hope it helps someone. I hope that everyone out there is having a great day, and I hope that I hope that you can continue that and improve your trading somehow today. And as always, I hope that you can make someone else smile, because that's what's most important in life. But anyway, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.